Good evening, welcome to the Town of Hanover Select Board meeting of August 22nd, 2022. Here tonight to have some fun and do good work for the town. As always, the first order of business is public comment. Hearing none. We were relatively brief agenda tonight, but it's important for us to meet for a couple of reasons, and we're going to get on with it. So the second item on our is a request. I move that we approve the administrative correction for property located at 56 Greensboro Road. At the last meeting, this came up. We'll second that. Okay. At the last meeting, this came up, and we were a little confused by it, but we've gotten some additional information. And or do you have any questions on this now? Explanation. So I think we're ready to go on. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It passes. The next order of business. I don't have to. This is not a motion, but I guess I'll move this to Select Board accept the settlement agreement between Dartmouth College, the North Capital Plan Valuation, and the Town of Hanover, as recommended by the Board of Assessors. I guess we need this. That would authorize you to sign this agreement.
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't you come on up? I don't. The board's had a chance to see this, review it, we talked about it a bit, but basically, when the golf course is no longer being used as a golf course, the town of Hanover stepped forward and suggested the college, but it's not taxable. And the college rejected to that. Originally, we took the position that a substantial amount of it was taxable. We looked at what might be used for educational purposes, and the college took the position that it's not taxable, period. Since then, we negotiated where they were paying approximately $200,000 in taxes.
No, it's 115,000, and it's based on a value of $6.5 million, which ironically is what a kind of a high-end golf course would be worth anyways.
Just like procedure, Norm should introduce himself.
Oh, introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, you have a mic.
Yeah, it's a good mic there.
Oh, there's a mic.
Yeah,
Norm Bernache, Director of Assessing,
So they'll be paying approximately $150,000.
115,000.
Which forward until the property is developed. And then however they develop it will drive their taxation on that property, whether it's dorms or other educational purposes.
Correct. With like I said, ironically, it's about $6.5 million. It equates to about a $6.5 million assessment. Just not much of a background, but as in our discussions, they had dug deeper into the land issues and the wetlands and the things like that, and where the exact trails were. That was when the chairman of the Board of Assessors and I met with Matt Gardner, and I met with them. We went through the sort of the land uses pretty thoroughly, and came to this number to which we agree with.
I should also add that maybe 2 years ago, Norm, 2 to 3 years ago, you said you worked with the college, really look at every college property and assess it in terms of is it taxable and at what value might it be taxed, and came to an agreement with the college on every college property. This became an outlier in terms of something we still hadn't agreed on.
Correct.
So we've now, I think, got 100%.
We have a handshake, and we have a good understanding, and Dan Jasinski from the college, the director of real estate, and I have a great working relationship, and our goal is to be fair to both parties and have a systematic approach to what we do.
Okay. So what you need from tonight is acceptance of the recommendation for the assessors, and we giving the board to Alex authority to sign the agreement on behalf of the town.
Yeah. Just for clarification, it's my recommendation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yours.
It's my recommendation, not the Board of Assessors.
So, for questions. All those in favor? Aye. Alex, you're hereby authorized to sign this again. Thank you, Norm. I know a lot of work went into this.
Yes,
Appreciate you for sticking with it.
there we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Norm.
Thank you.
So, the next is a continued discussion regarding the proposed adoption of the rental housing code ordinance. We've had many iterations. I think we're getting closer. There is an FAQ on the website.
Yep.
That people can see that kind of answers the most frequently asked questions in terms of what this ordinance is supposed to do, why, how it does it. Any other input, any other questions or input from the board? I guess the next step is going to be a working group. Then comes back for a public hearing, and then we act on it accordingly. Do you have a date yet for the workshop?
We do, yes, so Thursday, September 8th from 1 to 2 p.m. here in Town Hall. We will also make a Zoom link available and as well as a recording of the meeting.
Thursday, September 8th.
Thursday, September 8th, yeah, from 1 to 2 p.m. And in the meantime, we would suggest people head to our website. We have a page at hanovernh.org/rental housing that has the FAQ document. It has the ordinance draft. It also has a link to a brief survey that we are asking community members to fill out to give us feedback if they can't make it to the meeting or they'd like to say something to put it on the record before the meeting.
Is that on the homepage or is that in addition?
It is on the homepage right now also,
I
yeah.
have trouble finding.
I have trouble finding a lot of things. But yes, it's on the homepage and we'll make sure it's prominent, it stays on there up until the meeting.
Any other discussion on that?
No, I think the process makes sense and get the input, and then we'll have a public hearing and people will have an opportunity to come here and speak directly to us.
So Kari Asmus of Etna, but I also am a property owner here in town at Brook Hollow. And I just wanted to reiterate three, questions, concerns that I've mostly been asking since June. One is, again, applicability. And I went through Brook Hollow and I counted things up. There are 79 units. And between units that are owned by LLCs, trusts, or that have mailing addresses that are separate from the unit, there are 45 of them. So over half of the units at Brook Hollow would be saying, does this apply to me? So I'm really hoping that we can hone the applicability. The fact, which is really a great resource to have and to read over, said that they're not so much concerned about the legal ownership as they are about the occupancy, and that makes sense. And so how I interpreted that was that it was, yes, there would be exceptions. So say that it's belonging to an LLC and the partner is also living in the unit. It doesn't really make sense to treat that as a rental. But then, the question is for the person whose case that is who do you submit to? And could we make it a little clearer? Again, who does this apply to and who does it not apply to? There's also the occupancy or the definition in zoning about if it's your primary residence, and we have a number of units that it's not their primary residence, but they're never rented out. It's, so that the children can go to school here in town. It's a second home that is just waiting for people to drop in. So again, would those be applied or not? So again, for the more than half of the people there, if we could get more information about applicability, I think that'd be really helpful. There was also the last time I was here, I read the sentence and I have not gotten any more insights about it shall be unlawful for anyone to rent, offer to rent, or allow any person to occupy any unit without a certificate of compliance. Again, what does occupy mean in that instance? Because if you simply mean rent, you wouldn't have to say occupy. So occupy has to mean something different. And I don't know what it means. What if you have a house sitter for you're 3 months away? What if it's, and what about family members and so on? So again, I just really feel that before the 8th, if we could know more precisely who this applies to, where the exceptions are, what, occupy means, that would be just so very useful to the conversation. And then, finally, I continue, and I know others continue to have concerns about the interpretation of this statute and applying it in this way. The last time we were all here, our director of planning talked about a rental code. And so I, said, could you please let me know what you mean by the rental code? And he sent me the RSA. Well, there is a New Hampshire Supreme Court ruling that says that code does not apply once a town adopts an ordinance. So I'm still very much not understanding how we get to apply this, in this situation. Again, the purpose says that, we're looking for minimal standards, but you look at the list of things that get to be looked at, and it's very detailed. So that's the third big thing that I think there are a number of people out there who own properties who are just scratching their heads about. And if we could get more insights into that, I mean, in particular, on the fact, the very first question, it mentions that an ordinance was adopted in 2013. And it's like, and again, I signed up for that, I'm all for being part of the solution here. But like, what was wrong with the problem with inspecting when there's a problem versus inspecting everybody? Again, if all 45 of those units that maybe fall under this ordinance, I mean, just Brook Hollow alone would be paying, over $13,000 towards this. I mean, I know it's over a 3-year period, but we're going to have people moving in and out and everything else. So, I mean, it's not a negligible amount. And again, I just think we need, if we're going in that direction, we need to be really clear on how it serves a purpose and that it actually, fits what the RSA has in mind. So thank you. And I have written it, Peter. Peter, you're great saying, send it off. And I know that planning though is really busy, and I do appreciate that the fact was put together, but I think we're still needing some more information coming this way instead of just sending questions that way. Thank you.
Anything more on the we're on to battery questions. We have, I move that we approve the Upper Valley Walk and Alzheimer's and request and the Hop request that's presented for this meeting.
So second?
So there's no problem.
Nope, not.
All in favor?
Aye.
They've been approved. Minutes of August, July 25 and August 8. I move that we approve the minutes of July 25th as presented.
Just trying to, that was one that we were looking at, and then we asked to add a little more detail. Is that July 25 one?
Yes.
Okay.
I've looked at these and I'm ready to approve them.
Fine. I move approval of the July 25 minutes.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
You want to move on to date?
Someone up here. Want to see it before I approve? Yes, I would recommend that we approve the August 8th board minutes.
So second?
All in favor?
Aye.
They are approved. Administrative report. Alex.
All right.
What you up to?
Well, just a couple things here. So one is hiring and staffing, kind of update again. And we've talked about this before, and I'm probably gonna end up being a little bit of a broken record here during the reports. But obviously we're short-staffed in a number of different areas, and I included in the written report, if anybody wants to see, a table of organization from Hanover Parks and Rec. And it's color coded. You can see which positions are filled and which positions are vacant. And it's a little dire over there. And in fact, there was a bit of an update since I wrote the report, because there was a couple different reasons that I wanted to bring this up. One, just broadly, the sort of scope of the challenges that we are facing. The second thing is the importance of the upcoming class and comp and salary study that we got our contract language finished today. So we're going to be moving forward with that. We talked to MRI last week and we did not get any other responses. So we're moving forward there, and we have a 3-month timeline on that project to be completed. That will be sort of the first tier of the project. The second tier is going to be a little bit more longer term, and is going to be a little bit of a broader scope, kind of looking at the next 5 to 7 to 10 years, and some of the retirements and the transitions that we know we're going to be having, and just setting ourselves up for success there. And then the third reason to bring that up was some event staffing. But over the weekend, we got an update from Parks and Rec that they are not going to be able to host the Adventurers program for 3rd and 5th graders at the start of the school year, because they don't have the staffing to be able to do that. And John Sherman did write up a memo that sort of explained it. I know this is a really hard decision for them to make. And the intention is to get the program going again once they have the amount of staff in place they need. And so what I thought I would also do in each of these updates, it's not in the written report, but I'll include that each month going forward, which is just, I thought maybe what would be interesting to know for the board and the public, which is how many people we've hired and how many people who have left each month. So for the last 2 months, we have had 10 people leave employment in Hanover and 8 people start employment. And so I just thought it might be worthwhile to see those numbers every month, kind of as we go. The other reason we brought up the staffing questions was about Fall Fest and Home for the Holidays. After going over all this with John and the Parks and Rec department, we calculated that the number of hours needed organization-wide, staff-wise, to run Fall Fest is in north of about 150 hours of staff time. And it's pretty significant. It's basically every department. And so the sort of question or recommendation to the board was, instead of spreading ourselves too thin, trying to run events and potentially putting too much pressure on staff, is saying, okay, maybe we can hold off on this event for this year and focus the energy on making sure we do fewer events better than more events less well. So Fall Fest was the one that folks thought was a really big time commitment from all the departments. Home for the Holidays is one that we would like to continue to do. There is a funding need for that, which is around $2,500 or $3,000. And so, but we wanted to make sure to let all of you know about the staffing questions for the events, and if that was basically okay to move ahead with not planning on doing Fall Fest this year and planning on doing Home for the Holidays, and then returning to our regularly scheduled programming once we have the staff in place. So I don't know if anybody has any questions or concerns.
I think in general, the concept of doing fewer things well, which is more things less well, is the right concept. We trust you, the departments, to figure out what those events are. So I mean, that would be my degree of takeaway.
Fall Fest is often attended by our own employees and their families.
Right.
And I wanted to make sure that if we develop Fall Fest, which I'm not opposed to, that we keep our eye on continuing the townwide staff appreciation December holiday.
Okay.
Because that is an exclusively in-house kind of record. and, you know, acknowledging the people's, contributions, and it's a real family affair. And I didn't want to, if we're going to give up the fall fest, I didn't want to, take our eye off the town, employee appreciation meal that happens in December.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Yeah, I think I would reinforce that.
Okay.
Saying that, but also as part of the holiday program, it is a big uplifting community event.
Mhm.
That goes on, and that also helps businesses,
Mhm.
give them some publicity. And it's, when you go up and down Main Street and the side streets during an event, it's really a very joyous event. So that's the last one I want to cancel, but we're not doing that.
Right.
So if you have to choose one or the other, I go with the fall.
Okay.
Just so you're aware, if you haven't hung out here.
Right.
Christmas time, because when the students leave, just before Thanksgiving, you can feel the volume of businesses drop dramatically. And so to celebrate something for the holidays, community event, I think is great. It's very fun and exciting, especially when weather cooperates.
Yeah. Does that happen in December?
Yeah, it does sometimes.
Okay.
You have to have a little snowflake, you have to have a little snowflake, not a lot.
Right, okay, we'll work on that, yeah.
But I think that I agree with you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and especially as I sort of navigate some of these things, I mean, I was very helpful getting all the information from John, but just want to make sure I'm not, you know, we're not gonna, I don't know, cancel something that we definitely should not. Okay, so that was that. And then I wanted to just give a very quick kind of readout from in two different department head meetings. We had a conversation about the future. And so the department head meetings tend to focus a little bit more, and they will going forward a little bit more on kind of what we're doing week to week and making sure we're connecting dots between department heads. But before we kind of got into that groove, I did want to take a minute out to kind of step back. And so department heads came into the meeting with some different ideas about basically where they see themselves in 10 years. And that question had to be modified a little because many of the answers to that question was on a beach. And so it was, well, where's your department head in 10 years? And there were 5 things that were the most common themes that came up. And I just wanted to share them in the report in here. These are sort of the highest priority things that came from our department heads for the next 5 or 10 years. So one was hiring and staffing. This is not just filling positions, but filling them well for changing demands. And this includes doing so in a way that improves gender and other demographic representation, work-life balance, and is responsive to things that might be beyond town control, such as climate conditions or maybe the college's plans. Number 2, and I wanted to call out succession planning on its own because it's so widely important and will be needed at the vast majority, basically all but several of our current department heads will most likely retire in the next 7 years or something along those lines. So making sure that we are preparing ourselves for that transition properly is really important. Number 3 was integrating technology more into various department operations that help streamline activities and reduce paper usage, as well as allow community members, some of who need improved internet access, to be able to access more services and information online. Number 4 was facility and building needs from offices, buildings, recreation fields, that any improvements that would be made on those fronts should be done in sustainably minded ways and part of a very comprehensive long-term capital planning process. And number 5 was matching the services that different departments provide to changing community and regional needs. For example, that came up a lot with the HOW and at the library, making sure that they understand what their audiences are looking for and what they need, and making sure that what they're providing is kind of matched to that need. So those were the 5 kind of biggest themes that came out from the 2 conversations with our department heads in thinking about the future. Next was an election update from our town clerk. So there's a couple different things in here that will also be on the website as well. We did create a new elections page on the website, which also is it's a little hard to find right now, but you can also go to Hanover NH, make sure I say it right, hanovernh.org/elections, and that will have the most up-to-date information on it right on that page there. A couple deadlines, I'll give one upcoming deadline that is important to know, which is Wednesday, September 7th at 2 p.m. That is the voter registration deadline. So if you are not registered to vote yet, please do so. You can find more information on how to do that on that website. You can also email townclerk@hanovernh.org or give us a call at 603-640-3202. The next was in my report was rental housing ordinance. I think we covered all of those different questions. I'll just remind people about the public workshop meeting, obviously, and to head to the website to fill out that survey. The next was downtown Hanover, and I was using the phrase economic development, even though it wasn't a great phrase, but I read a very interesting case study not sent, but written by Rob from Daybreak, who spent some time chatting with last week, and he wrote a really interesting case study about Tupelo, Mississippi. And some interesting, I want to ask him permission before sharing that article that he wrote, but it was a really interesting case study and wasn't totally complimentary of sort of the economic development phrase and some of the maybe implications built into that. But anyway, I digress slightly. So downtown Hanover, there was an interesting conversation that the Upper Valley Business Alliance hosted a couple weeks back. And there was a few folks there. We had a really interesting conversation about housing and economic development, but also some of the cultural and social dynamics of people who move here, and then the people that real estate agents are seeing move here and leave. And sort of, you know, the way that we do exit interviews when an employee leaves, a lot of real estate agents do kind of exit interviews when people leave the area. And two of the things that came up from those conversations that were interesting to hear about, one was for people who might come here for school or for a job. And for example, perhaps they live in an apartment housing, but there's not a lot of housing stock between apartment housing and pricier single family homes. And there's kind of a big middle area there missing, so that people who might move to apartments maybe down on Mouseport Road and want to kind of take the next step from a housing perspective, they don't have a lot of options. And so, but they don't want to stay in the apartment, but they can't afford something else, and that kind of constrains their decision making. The other thing that they said was that people had trouble connecting to other people here and finding people their own age, or finding social things to do, or getting around on the weekends if they didn't have a car, and things like that. So that was kind of interesting to hear about. And I think they're actually related. The housing and kind of community piece are intricately related. Continue to meet with business owners. I'm hoping to put a group together here before the end of September with a number of stakeholders like Vital Communities and the Regional Planning Commission, thinking about what can the town do to help support businesses downtown? How can we connect resources, connect businesses to each other? So it's been super interesting. Each business owner I've talked to, my ask is to introduce me to one more business owner, and I'm just sort of slowly making my way down the line there. Next is sort of the civics committee and activities. I don't really have a super thorough update here, but I did want to call people's attention that the next episode of the Hanover Happenings podcast, which you can find at hanoverhappenings.com, that will be out a week from today, and that will have our first employee spotlight in there. And so I guess the first one was kind of my background, which everybody heard, so that's sort of boring at this point, but the next one will be one of our employees. And so if you're curious about something really cool that one of our employees is doing, check out that podcast episode and learn a little bit about that. And there'll be one of those, at least one employee and or volunteer per month on there. Another thing that we're looking at doing, but I wanted to bring it up here to see if there were any questions or concerns, is as far as how we solicit applications and interest in different boards and committees, is creating a little bit of a standardized process, perhaps an application that would ask people some questions about what their interests are in getting involved, what qualifications or skills they might bring to the table, why are they excited about this opportunity. What I'm hoping to do at some point, but this is not a short-term project, is create a sort of volunteer database. So ideally, you'd go on and say, I'm interested in this subject, but I can only volunteer Tuesdays and Thursdays from 6 to 10 p.m. And then that would go in the back end and hopefully try to find something that works for that person. I don't think we're going to be doing anything automated in the beginning, but we do want to, I would like to get that process to be a little bit more standardized, especially if we have more and more interest. we might have multiple people interested in the same position. So how do we sort through that? So unless there's any kind of concerns there, I'll work with some of the staff here and we'll, write up kind of a short application, nothing crazy, but just ask people to include, a little information about themselves and what they hope to accomplish and why they want to be on X board or X committee. There's a couple other small updates here that I included at the end of the report that just didn't fit into kind of a category. One is I've been communicating back and forth with New Hampshire Department of Transportation about traffic calming and restriping on Route 10. So far, it doesn't sound like they are likely to implement some of the things that we've asked for. This is one of the reasons that I've talked to our public works director and other staff internally that we intend to try to do some cost benefit analysis of state versus local control of some of these roads, that there could be a benefit. We could imagine a benefit of the town having control over. There are two things left that we are asking the DOT for. So we're still kind of going back and forth with them. But of course, it's it's not the perfect match all the time, trying to do local traffic calming, bike friendly, pedestrian friendly roadway improvements, fitting that into the State Department of Transportation's guidelines. I've been having some really fun conversations with Sustainable Hanover, which actually took a whole new, this isn't in my report, but it took a whole new, my assistant Carrie and myself today, we've been touring all of the municipal buildings as well. And we were at the water reclamation facility today and had a really interesting conversation with Kevin over there about composting. And so one of the things that I'm hoping to really plug into with Sustainable Hanover is food waste, and seeing what we can do to get food waste out of our trash stream, looking at recycling, looking at trash, looking at food waste. So that's something I'm excited to plug into. Also, for anybody who's watching this at home, there's a new microphone up on the table there that we're hoping is a little clearer for people listening at home. So if people can hear this and they couldn't hear that, or they could hear that, please let us know if that's working or not. Two last quick things. One is if people are not on the Upper Valley Business Alliance newsletter and you are a business owner in town, I would suggest getting on that. They had 2 different grant assistance programs that were in the last newsletter. I have links to those in the written report. But if you are a business owner in town and you're looking for some support, maybe to make a renovation or you can open a business or something like that, you can go to my report, or you can go to the Upper Valley Business Alliance website. They do have some links for local financial assistance programs that I thought were valuable and worth mentioning. And then in my report, this is really more something to read, but there was a really cool tip that I just happened to see. I don't know if I'll do a sustainability tip each month, but I just saw this one and thought I would share it, which was a way to keep fruits and vegetables cold by taking 2 clay pots, putting one smaller one inside the larger one, filling between with sand, filling that with water. And as the water evaporates, it will actually cool. And so that was, I thought that was just kind of clever, kind of like a fun DIY project at home. And if you want to read more about that, you can click on the administrative report, and that's it.
I'm exhausted.
Okay.
Well done.
And that is very fascinating.
Yes.
Question back in your election report.
Yes.
I have Bobby Hitchcock of the team had a chance to coordinate with the college, veterans and college Republican students. So that they are maybe, because their students come back very soon.
It's two weeks.
2 weeks, yeah. And the problem for, actually there are classes themselves beginning of 12, which of course was from the 13th. So, I wanted to make sure that that absentee, whether or not people have to, I know that there's a lot of correspondence, and I know, maybe catching the eye on the students or whoever's sending out multiple mailings that are now going to the incoming class and adding a little, even with a red box around it, something to catch people's eye, because they'll be moving to Hanover for the first time and may not realize that they're changing residence.
Right.
And that they have an opportunity to vote here, and so they're sending that mailing to Albuquerque, and the
Right.
students opening it up like, wow, in addition to packing my being able to register to vote.
Those are the two important things.
I
Time,
really agree. As a college student, that was
thank you. That is a great question. I will ask our clerk. I'm not sure. I know they've been super busy working on a million things. I will make sure. So I'm not aware if they did or didn't, but I will definitely reach out and ping them about that. And if needed, help connect them to folks at Dartmouth.
that's
Yeah.
Just good example of trying to have town cooperate with the state on the roads. So the example I'll just throw out was probably too late to have an expectation that I'd be successful, but I have to take a shot. Starts on Wednesday, the paving down Route 10. And as you go over Big Brook, on both sides, when the state redid the bridge, they put the grade in for the water runoff at a high point versus a low point. So every heavy rainstorm, the road floods. And it really floods. And I've seen police officers down there with their boots on, jamming, trying to help push it, and other problems. So it's just one example of, it's not our road, but how we can influence, and maybe for an additional cost, which I think, even if we have to pay for it, it would be worth it. To just put one grade where the low point of the road is, so that it would roll off versus flooding. So I can pass that on, and you can pass it on to people.
I'll do that. Yeah.
But it's just an example of the state versus the town, because everyone thinks that's a town road, therefore the complaints. My neighborhood come to me, and I say, yes, you're right, it is flooding again.
Yeah.
So that's just an example. But I recognize they're geared up to start paving Wednesday, and I don't think it's on their list, but again, a quick shot with the jackhammer, put in a new grate, would probably have an unbelievable quality of improvement of life for drivers, pedestrians, and for your police officers.
I'll just meet you out there with the jackhammer. But yes, we'll pass that. I'll ask Pete about that.
Very obvious.
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone.
I don't know how things like that, or you see those things. I don't know how that's possible.
Yeah, because it wasn't too long ago, it was several years ago that they redid the bridge
Okay.
and that section. It's all, it's all ready to prep to pave it.
Right.
And they already did the grinding and all that, so again, they're gonna be here in force on Wednesday.
Right. Well, so yeah, I'll send it out.
We've got 24 hours.
It just seems like a simple solution that, since the equipment's there.
I will hope that that was in their plans anyway, but yeah.
And just like Greensboro Road, which you'll hear about more and more and get to know more of the community. Everyone thinks that's town road. But it's not. It's been years and years of challenge on erosion. But that's another topic.
Okay. Well, I'm sure we'll be talking more about that.
Any other question? Selectboard reports.
None.
Nothing to read.
Any other business? There's been a request for a non-public session to discuss items pursuant to RSA 91.832 and E.
Joe Garrity, yes.
Yes.
Yes, Carter, yes.
We are in non-public session. Thank you. See you tomorrow.
Yes, see you tomorrow.
I'll be there too.